Now, the House of Commons in Canada has backed the government's decision to impose emergency powers to deal with weeks-long protest blockades against the COVID restrictions. The motion passed with 185 votes to 151 on Monday. And over the weekend, of course, police have cleared the final kind of protest sites in Ottawa on streets around Parliament Hill. Now, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, as many of you will be familiar with, invoked the Emergencies Act early last week. The powers, it basically allowed Trudeau a whole suite of things, things like the ability to freeze bank accounts of the protesters, among other measures. Now, I found this. I mean, I'm going to start with you, Ashley, because you are indeed Canadian.
I am, yeah.
What a treat to have you with us. Now, I found this entire thing really quite disturbing, actually, the way that Trudeau, in my mind, has completely overstepped, acted like somebody that's quite deranged, in my opinion. I think what he's been doing with these protesters is completely wrong. But what's your view on it all?
Yeah, I mean, I've been writing about this for the last few weeks, and I think, and actually for some time I've published on this as well, I think Trudeau is a very good example of what we call kindly power or kindly authoritarianism even, where we give leaders a free pass to do all sorts of things, so long as they use the right buzzwords, promise to act on behalf of the vulnerable. But actually, I think this is just a kind of therapeutic rehashing of a very old attempt to exert control by encouraging people to be fearful of something and promising to protect. And this is what, dictators have done. They big up a threat and then they promise to keep you safe. It's like safety has become the new law and order in a way. We saw this with COVID and we're seeing this now. Trudeau did everything he could to smear the protesters as white supremacists. The thing is, I'm Ojibwe. I'm obviously a mix of Indigenous Canadian and white. But my family, the Indigenous side of my family, was part of the protests. And in fact, my aunt organized some of her people in her area to go down to Ottawa. And they were definitely not going to be walking around with like Nazi flags and all of this sort of thing. And what were they fighting for? They were fighting for the same thing that a lot of people actually want, which is self-determination. That's what Indigenous people want. And an end to surveillance. Indigenous people are some of the most surveilled people in Canada. Our kids get taken away in huge numbers because we're just being watched constantly. And that's what the truckers want too. They want an end to the COVID surveillance. They want to be able to make choices about what they'll do with their bodies. And Trudeau just smeared them, bigged them up as this huge threat, and then used that as a reason to come down hard and to take away freedoms. I mean, he's photogenic, it's kindly, but it is kindly power. It's a way of justifying taking away democracy, taking away civil rights, but we give it a pass because it's nice. Kevin?
Well, it's democracy. Basically, the Canadian people, and I feel okay commenting on a Canadian issue as you were commenting earlier on issues here, but I do obviously respect the fact that you're a Canadian national. But it's democracy, right? Parliament voted for it. Parliament was being blockaded. People didn't like government policy. People were being harassed. Billions of dollars were being wasted. I work very closely with people around the world, and friends in Canada say it is a relief now that the government has taken strong action and solved the situation. The great thing is this is beautiful, Michelle. It was a vote in Parliament, and if the
what
people,
was beautiful?
The vote, it was democracy in action.
Oh
right?
my gosh! It's democracy in action to remove the right to protest, to freeze people's bank accounts.
There's no right.
Okay.
No, I haven't finished.
Okay.
So I'll let you go, and I disagreed with loads of what you said. So sorry. It's basically if Parliament votes for something there, if Canadians don't like it at the next election, they can make their voices heard.
At the next election.
What's wrong with that?
Democracy is not confined to elections. I'm afraid.
Right.
When you vote for someone, you don't say, "Oh, that's it. My say is done. My say is done. Now you just
Canada was being
mow
held
over
to
me."
ransom by people who didn't like government policy. Lots of people who don't like the government's policy here can't stop the country functioning, right?
If you ask me, the people that are being held to ransom is not the government. It is the people that are being told, have an injection of something that you don't want or you will not be able to work. That, for me, is wrong. Michael?
I must say, I'm very proud to be English and very grateful that I'm living in England because obviously we're taking away the restrictions while we see authoritarian regimes across the world. And I just want people to consider this. I mean, imagine, for instance, if Donald Trump, as US president, had taken these measures whereby they were going to start freezing bank accounts. I mean, I saw a report before we came on air. Apparently a woman who donated, she wasn't even there, she donated towards the blockade, the protest, the freedom convoy, and she's had her bank account frozen. So apparently this is happening now to people that aren't even actually physically going there. And you can see the direction, the authoritarian direction this is going down. Very worrying, and I'm very proud to be living in England.
Ashley, final word to you as the Canadian on this.
I will admit that it is extremely divisive in Canada, extremely divisive. But I think what's happened is that we are ceding the demand for freedom and self-determination to the right. And I think that actually that used to be a left-wing value. I am a left-winger. I wanted to engage with people. I just interviewed Gord McGill, one of the truckers on our YouTube channel, Sublation Media. And I thought he was great. He's totally self-taught, autodidact. That's the image of the worker that people used to love, like reading and trying to understand the world. And all the comments underneath are just writing him off. Well, what do you expect? Of course, the vacuum's going to get filled.
Well,
by
I would have told you. I'll tell you what I would have expected. Actually, more Western leaders to actually come out and condemn some of the goings-on that's been happening in Ottawa.
He's just doing what they would like to do.
But get this, I'll tell you someone who has called it out. Listen to this. The China Embassy, Ottawa, has tweeted the following. Over the past few days, the Canadian police used pepper spray, stun grenades, as well as batons to violently disperse the Freedom Convoy demonstrators that had dominated downtown Ottawa. The Canadian government called the demonstrators a threat to democracy. But back in 2019, when radical elements assaulted the police and wantonly disrupted public order in Hong Kong, the Canadian side asserted that it will stand up loudly and clearly for human rights all around the world, and wantonly criticised, maligned and smeared the Hong Kong police force. In the eyes of some people in Canada, similar protests and demonstrations should be referred to differently in different places. In Hong Kong, they are human rights movements, but in Canada, they are a threat to democracy. Such stark double standard is unacceptable. Now, I've got to say, Justin Trudeau, when even the Chinese embassy is calling you out about human rights, then you know you might be doing something wrong. And I would say, and I can hear Kevin, he's not happy about any of this, but I'm going to have the final word on it. And my final word is shame, actually, on all of the leaders that haven't condemned some of what is being wholly unacceptable happening in Canada.